Hello everyone, and welcome to Soul GPS, where we learn to take our lives back in our hands after narcissistic abuse. Today we're going to talk about siblings, and in particular I have a question that was left as a comment in one of my earlier videos that I wanted to bring up and actually answer today in this video. And I think it relates to many of us, and hopefully is going to bring some peace and relief to those of you who have really wondered why things turned out the way that they did. So the question was left by Valerie, and she's asking about narcissistic siblings. She asked, how come we did not become narcissistic too? I always felt like I did not belong in my family and would often distance myself through creativity or staying over at friends' homes. So this is an excellent question, excellent comment, and let's dive in. So why does it happen, right? Why does one person turn out this way and the other one the other way, even though they're in the same place, under the same roof? Well, let's try to put ourselves back in a home, in a home of an abusive parents, because that's what tends to happen. There's got to be some form of either a witnessing of abuse to begin with in the first place, or a direct abuse. I would dare to say that initially, when you have a baby that is raised in a home that is toxic, that child, when it's really small, is in a stage of more witnessing of the abuse as opposed to being a direct recipient in most cases. Later on that might change and they will be abused as well, which is what tends to happen, because if one person is abused inside of a family unit, that abuse tends to spread to all of the family members at some point down the road. But let's just say that this is a small child and it is not raised in a super sadistic environment in which actually as a baby they would get abused, which does happen. Evil that is on this degree does occur, and we need to talk about this more, because it's going down and it's happening and it's absolutely horrific. But let's just build a little bit of a model. So there's a child, or two, let's just say it's two children, right? We have two. Let's say they're twins. And for example purposes, and they're witnessing abuse going on between the mother figure and the father figure. And again, for model purposes, for example purposes, let's just say that the father is the abuser and the mother is the abused. Now, this is not in any way to say that that is even the majority of the situations, because I have my own doubts about that. I'm starting to notice that it's actually much more pervasive and more or less down the middle than we think it is, meaning that as many men are getting abused as there are women. It's just more women speak about it because there's less social stigma around women being abused than there are around men being abused. But it is happening to men as well, and I want to acknowledge that here on this channel, because we have to come forward and we have to give each other support, and the sooner we do it, the better for everyone. So we have twins observing this dynamic. What tends to happen to the child is the child is forced into a situation where they need to choose who they're going to be identifying with more, the abused or the abuser. That moment is going to be a defining moment. Again, this might be a series of moments. This is a model. We're simplifying it. But there is a point at which the child, subconsciously, because they're small, is going to feel what is more right, what feels more right to them, and who they're going to identify with more. So if the mother is crying and the father just started yelling, or even there was some physical abuse going on, the child that is going to run, let's say, or have the urge to run to the crying mother and console her, that's going to be the one who most likely for the rest of their life is going to be moving or predisposed in that direction, unless something traumatic happens and they switch, which, given the situation we have in this world, is possible because of the barrage of stories conditioning, through media, through food, which imbalances us, is occurring, that I believe that there could be a switch. It's possible, it's entirely possible. Humans are very malleable creatures. It's kind of like what we put in is what we get out. If you expose yourself to good information, if you are a truth seeker, if you feed yourself good food, good thoughts, true thoughts, without ignoring the bad, that's a deception. Very, very big deception of the New Age movement to be really aware of, which is the idea that we only have to focus on the positive and always only strive towards happiness. Ignore the evil, ignore the bad, don't look at it. And what does that do? That allows it to run rampant and only grow in our society, which is one of the reasons why I believe things are as bad as they are today, is because good people are being forced to look away. So then let's look on the other child. So there's this other child is actually going to feel like, whatever, let them argue, and is either going to take a more of an ambivalent stance or actually identify with the abuser because they feel there's more power, there's more strength, there's more security for them there. Now, this is not the primary cause, I don't think. This is an effect of an imbalance that is already or might already be present within the child. The child that identifies with the abused is much more likely balanced because it is the wrong thing to abuse another. So they're taking an active stance towards that person, or towards the person that is being abused, whereas the person that is the abuser and that identifies with the abuser may have already within them a certain kind of a brain imbalance that makes them cut off from empathy and a certain group of feelings that makes us much more able to see what's right and what's wrong. That could also come through conditioning too. So it could be, it could stem from something as early as when the mother was pregnant and something traumatic has happened that created some form of an injury in the child's brain. And there's a research that I have come across that I think really deserves a deeper look, and that is the idea. It just really makes sense. The idea that the people who are left brain imbalanced, which means they have overactive left brain, which is the analytical brain, the brain that's driven 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is how we get things done, right? And it's more cut off from the imaginative brain of the right hemisphere that is also connected with emotions and feelings, having the ability to put yourself in other people's shoes, tend to take on that narcissistic pathway. And it's all about them. It's me. They're not able to take the stance of another person. So that imbalance needs to be corrected, versus the person who has a right brain imbalance that is much more prone to identifying with the people who are being abused, but also become the abused down the road, become the person, the target, the primary target. So that, I think that is a very interesting information that definitely merits deeper research. There's some biological base to this as well, and that is that supposedly, and I really want to look deeper into this as well, when the person that has too much of an overactive left brain hemisphere does not have the emotional brain as developed, the link goes straight to the reptilian brain, which is like the brain stem that deals with pure survival. Whereas the other person that is on the right, that has the right brain imbalance, is very much connected with their mammalian or limbic brain that is responsible for emotionality, but they are cut off from the R complex, which is the reptilian side of their brain, which deals with pure survival and the ability to actually stand up to injustice and defend yourself, which is why a lot of the people who are right brain imbalanced and who tend to be victims have the inability to stand up for themselves. It's like they just accept the abuse. You know, I know I've been one of those people, and even though sometimes I would see it or it would be happening to me, I would just swallow it and I would just take it, and I would not say no. And no is like the most important, most powerful lost word of this century, if not the millennium. I mean, it goes back, way back, because it's one of the primary modalities of control that the powers that shouldn't be use in order for us to comply with abuse on mass scale. And they do it through putting us through a variety of deceptions and building systems that reward compliance and that reward abuse, strength, you know, stepping on people's shoulders in order to gain something for themselves. So this is what I would say happens in an abusive home, is there's an identification that the child does. It makes a choice which figure is the one that appeals to their biology, that appeals to their developing psyche the most, which I think also deals with what's, you know, it's like their own developing value system in a way. It's unconscious at this point, but it's like what's more important, you know, being there for someone who's suffering versus being there, you know, identifying with the person that they think could somehow protect them. So they kind of go with the stronger one. So I would love to hear what you guys have to say about this, what your experience has been. I think that this conversation definitely merits expansion. It merits looking even deeper into this. But then there's one more element of this that I think is important to address, which is that in the case of the child identifying with the abuser, their emotions will tend to project outwards. So they're going to take that aggression that they have witnessed and they're going to push it out onto other people. That's how they'll deal with the trauma, because they too have been traumatized in that moment. Now, that person who is identifying with the abuser is going to, what they're going to do is they're going to take all of those emotions and turn them inward. And it's a lot, what tends to happen is there's a lot of self-punishment going on. They don't want to really express, you know, what they, what's going on, which is a pity, because a lot of the people who have a really overactive right brain hemisphere are very imaginative and artistic, and it can be the thing that keeps them, that prevents them from breaking through that bubble of you know, inward projections of aggression, and where we tend to be so mean to ourselves. And that's what makes us also later down the road accept abuse, because it's, you know, we're so used to it because we're doing it to ourselves so much of the time. So that's definitely, I think, something to ponder. The person who is doing that, who's, you know, turning those emotions inward, is basically training themselves to become a victim. They are victimizing themselves at this point by, you know, beating themselves up for something that was not even happening to them at that point. But eventually, later down the road, it probably will, because they become magnet for that, because they don't stand up for themselves. Whereas the person who is projecting the aggression outward becomes the abuser, becomes the bully, becomes the person who just continues to spread that virus in society on a larger scale. In both cases, both sides really end up abusing themselves, because if you're negative towards another person, you are causing harm to the world, which, since we're all connected, we are living in this reality, in this shared reality. And the more people suffer, the more each of us are going to suffer too as a result, one way or the other. You know, some of us might maybe not feel it as much than the others, but ultimately we're all suffering as a result. And I want to mention one more thing here in this video. Valerie has said, I'm guessing her name is Valerie, She said, I always felt like I did not belong in my family and would often dismiss myself through creativity or staying over at friends' homes. I just made a video about this, about linking dissociation with trauma and creativity, and how, you know, as children, we are unable to use our primary modalities of fight and flight and actually stand up to the parents, especially, you know, kids who have this sort of imbalance and tendency to identify with the abused. So what we do instead is we withdraw, and we use a combination of two other coping mechanisms, and those are freeze and flee. And we flee not outside, although we can do that too. You know, we go spend time in another environment. We go to friends' homes, right? Eventually, though, we have to return and deal with what's happening. And many of us didn't know. Many of us didn't know what was going on, but our body felt it. You know, our body could tell that this was not right. And I would say pretty much all people, unless they have been really, really badly damaged, either through, you know, some chemicals or been abused just so terribly as children that they have lost touch with who they are, you know, they've been through that much brainwashing, which I think can definitely happen. But I think majority of people inherently know the difference between what's right and wrong. In this case, you know, you felt what was wrong, and you tried everything you could to remove yourself from the environment, and if you couldn't do it physically, you did so mentally by escaping to another world, and that's called dissociation. And I made a video about it, and I wrote an article about it, and I will link the two down below this video. Just want to mention one more thing, which is, I think, the ultimate mindfuck of what can happen while we are witnessing, where children are witnessing their parents' abuse, is it can turn out that the person who is the victim, right, or who poses as the victim, is actually the abuser, because they're covert aggressive, and they have learned a variety of tactics throughout their life to, and that's a lot of when you have a combination of a narcissist with a borderline, just if we're going to get a little bit more technical, or these are the vulnerable narcissists. I think that's another definition for them. Well, labels aside, the outcome is that the child goes in to sympathize with the parent, and then later down the road discovers that it was actually the opposite dynamic going on, you know, and then it's like, oh my God, that flips everything upside down. But in the end, it is the truth that will always set us free. So continue to study, continue to research this phenomenon. We have to know about what's going on within ourselves, why we turned out the way that we did. You know, many people are going to say, no, don't go there. It's like, close this chapter, move on. We can't move on as free human beings unless we really put everything together. That's what this inner integration is all about, right? That's what we need to do if we want to move on. We need to cancel out all of these imbalances and put those things to bed. And every time you may notice that you discover something new about yourself, that you can feel it within your body, that something gets set right. That gives you the ability to reclaim the energy that was being sucked into that traumatic event, you know, and was preventing you from focusing your mental, your physical, your spiritual energy to take action in order to create the life that you want and make the changes this way also in the global community, which is what we so badly need. Otherwise, we're going to be, you know, bulldozed by all of this abuse that is only growing because it's being rewarded by, again, the powers that shouldn't be, in order to keep us in a controlled state. And notice this dialectic of the split that this system creates within us. You know, we either go one way, we either go towards becoming the victim, the target, or we go the other way, being the abuser, the bully. That, what it does is it splits society, you know, down the middle, somewhere around there. Like, few people are whole and complete. And therefore we end up fighting with each other, and we end up having living in this nightmare, in this mass consciousness nightmare. And that is the easiest way to control us. So it needs to be healed, and the healing begins within. And unfortunately, I don't know if how the narcissist can heal themselves, if that will ever happen. But I think if there is that possibility, which I'm open to all possibilities, it can only happen when they face themselves, the way we are facing ourselves now and healing our imbalances. And the only way they will do it is if they are no longer fed the supply coming from us, which means that we do have to remove ourselves from their environment. We do have to stop feeding this monster and take care of ourselves, which is something that we were never taught how to do, especially coming from this abuse. And once they're left to their own devices and they realize there's nobody around, once that happens, maybe then they will look in the mirror and they will seek some form of a change, because otherwise just echo. No one will be there to put up with their bullshit anymore. So maybe that's possible, but we'll leave that aside. That's their work. What the work we need to do is self-care, self-love, self-understanding, education. There is evil out there, people. There are very bad people out there in this world, and there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. There are also a lot of people who have been pulled into this game without even being conscious of it. So let me just say again that the fact that you're going through this and the fact that you're on the path of healing really is a blessing. It does not feel like this when you're going through the suffering. It really does not. It feels horrible. It often feels like you just don't want to go on anymore. But mark my words, it is building your muscles, your internal muscles. It is allowing you to get in touch with your feelings, get in touch with your inner rage, which we need to have access to, because going along with abuse is just simply not right. So we need to learn to say no. We need to learn to stand up for ourselves, and we need to learn to really take care of our health and of our sanity, and stop putting horrible things in our bodies. That's also a really important thing. I just posted on my Facebook an article I have found about this study that recently came out that confirms that acetaminophen, I hope I'm saying it right, or paracetamol, same compound that is in majority of over-the-counter pain medications such as Tylenol, has been shown to kill empathy in people, which in some ways makes sense, right? Because it affects the brain. It affects the brain by killing off the brain circuitry or affecting the brain circuitry in a negative way that is responsible for us feeling pain. And it's important to be able to feel pain. I'm not talking about the masochistic pain that that is just making you unable to do anything. But I mean, like, there is a certain amount of pain we have to feel in order to be able to tell the difference between what's okay and what's not okay. If we're disconnected from that, then we're like zombies just walking around and, just taking the blows. Don't do it, people. Don't do it. Don't do it. Get in touch with yourself. Empower yourself with knowledge. Empower yourself with self-love. Empower yourself with no. And always remember to let your inner compass guide you. Take care, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye.